Once upon a time, in the busy city of Banjul, lived a popular prostitute named Sira. Sira was an extremely beautiful woman who sold her body to men for money, not caring about her reputation or the fact that her father was a renowned pastor. Her exceptional skills in the bedroom drew men of different kinds to her, but Sira only chose men that she believed were wealthy. Her client base were filled with politicians and businessmen who could afford to sponsor the kind of life that she so wanted. A life full of luxury, where she could afford anything that she wanted. Sarah, despite being a prostitute, still made out time to attend her father's church. She would sit at the back, wearing her skimpy dress, as she listened to her father preach on the pulpit. She was such a rebellious girl who chose to be the black sheep of her family. Her sisters were nothing like her, but Sarah did not care. She went from one hotel to the other, servicing the numerous men that she slept with. Sarah did not care if the men were married or not. All she wanted was their money, and Sarah ensured that she stood by her rule, never to interfere with their private lives. Whilst her friends were working to make ends meet, Sarah was busy going on expensive trips to countries that her friends could only dream of. One day, Sarah got a call from one of her numerous men. He was a wealthy oil mogul who returned to the country a few days ago. Sarah never missed to see him whenever he arrived the country because of all the expensive gifts that he always got for her. The last time he was around, he got her a new Mercedes, and Sarah was over the moon. Immediately she got his call, she quickly dressed up in one of her beautiful dresses and got into her car, the same car that he got for her a while ago. As she drove to his hotel, she approached a traffic light and had to stop. Her car glass was up and her air condition chilled her entire body. Her favorite music was on and Sarah sat there as she waited for the traffic light to finally turn green. An old woman who was hawking bubblegum and sweets knocked on her window and pleaded for her to buy. Sarah ignored the woman at first, but after a while, she realized that the bubblegum she got a few days ago had finished. So, she wound down her glass and picked some bubblegum from the woman, who thanked her greatly as she paid for them. As Sarah put the gum in her bag, the traffic light turned green, and she proceeded to the hotel to meet her rich customer. As she pulled up in the driveway of the hotel, Sarah popped open one of the bubblegums and threw it in her mouth. She walked majestically to the hotel room and met the man who she had come to see. Sarah stood by the bed excited to see him again after several months. He held her in his arms as they both approached the bed, ready to have some fun, when suddenly a strange hand emerged from in between her legs and gave him a very hot slap. The kind of slap that echoed across the room like thunder. The man stumbled backwards, grabbing his face as his eyes widened in horror. What the hell was that? He screamed as his voice trembled. Sarah froze, unable to understand what was happening. She looked down slowly, her heart pounding in her chest as she stared at the hand protruding from between her thighs. Sarah screamed out in terror as she passed out on the ground. She woke up a few minutes later to find herself alone in the room. The man she had come to see was nowhere to be found, and Sarah could not blame him for running. She stared down at her thigh and realized that the strange hand was nowhere to be found. Sarah, shocked and confused, decided to head back home. She could not understand what had just happened, and she was too terrified to speak to anyone about it. But that was only the beginning. The next morning, Sarah sat on her bed wrapped in her silk robe, trying to convince herself that it was all a dream. It can't be real, she said to herself, as she tried to convince herself that she might just be drunk. But when she stood in front of her bathroom mirror and spread her legs open to inspect it herself, she screamed again. The hand was back, a small wrinkled hand that terrified her to the bone. Sarah stood there petrified as she gazed at the strange hands between her legs. She didn't know what to do or how to make it go away. As she stood there confused, her phone began to ring. It was Lamin, her best friend, the only man that Sarah had genuinely cared for, who never saw her as a tool to cure his lustful pleasure. Sarah hesitated as the phone continued to ring. She glanced at the screen, wondering if she should pick or not, when suddenly her doorbell rang. It was Lamin, and Sarah was not willing to allow him see her in such a state. So she quickly rushed to her wardrobe and wore an extremely long dress to help her hide the hand that crept out of her body. Then gently, she walked to the door where Lamin stood, looking so concerned. Are you okay? He asked Sarah, who did all she could to pretend that she was fine. But Lamin knew better than to believe her. He pressed on, but Sarah was not willing to let him know what was happening. She believed she could sort it out alone. But as the days went by, it became clear that she was wrong. Sarah had visited several spiritualists who revealed that someone so close to her was behind the curse. One even tried to deliver her from the hand, but the strange hand slapped him across the face, causing him to fall to the ground unconscious. Sarah sat in her living room alone as she tried to figure out who could have done this to her. In that moment, she remembered the old woman who sold bubblegum to her in traffic. Sarah felt a cold chill run down her spine. The woman's piercing eyes and crooked smile, the strange way she bowed slightly after handing her the gum. Sarah could feel it deep within herself that the woman was not ordinary. She jumped to her feet and grabbed her keys. Sarah drove straight to the junction where she met the old woman. But when she got there, the woman was nowhere to be found. She rolled down her car glass and asked a few vendors who seemed not to know who the old woman was. She asked several people and was about giving up when she came across a young woman who revealed that she knew where the old woman lived. Sarah followed the young woman who told her so many unsettling things about the old woman, how her 5 children died in a space of 1 year, and how people believed that she was behind their deaths. You have to be careful because this woman is so dangerous, the young woman warned Sarah, who nodded in silence as her heart pounded in her chest. They finally arrived at the house, and the young woman who took her to the house ran away, leaving her there alone. Sarah walked out of her car and approached the house, goosebumps filling her entire body, and she knocked on the door. After several knocks, no one responded, and Sarah decided to push open the door. The door creaked open, and Sarah walked into the house, curious about what she would find. She walked from room to room and noticed how dusty the house was. It was as if no one had lived in it for years, and Sarah could not imagine how someone would live in a house as dusty as this. She walked around for a few minutes and arrived at the room, which she believed was the old woman's room. Inside were stacks of bubblegum on a table, surrounded by candles, which sent chills down her spine. Sarah could not risk being found in the house, so she turned around and left, her heart beating like a drum. She drove home, wondering what she would do with the witch who had made her life a living hell. No man was willing to sleep with her now, after all the things that they had heard about her. Sarah did not know how to survive. For all these years, she had squandered her money, believing that she always had what it took to make more. But now, seeing the strange hand between her legs, Sarah knew that she was doomed. She had to find a way to get rid of the hand, and this she had to do fast. Sarah arrived home and met her best friend Lamin, who was standing in front of her house. He had called her for over 20 times and could not help but worry. He stood there and watched as Sarah approached him, looking so broken and sad. Lamin, this time, had to know what was going on. He pressed to know, and Sarah finally broke down. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she clutched his shirt and told him all that was happening. Lamin could not believe his eyes. How can you have a hand between your legs? He asked Sarah, who broke down in tears as Lamin pulled her into a hug. He could feel the pain in her voice and could not stand to see her cry. Sarah told him about the bubble gum and the old woman who sold it to her that night that it happened. I know she is behind it all, she said to Lamin, who stood still for a moment as he thought deeply. How about we pay your father a visit? You know he's a pastor. Lamin said to Sarah, who killed the idea on the spot. We can't possibly go to my father for a thing like this, she said to Lamin, who tried to convince her otherwise, but Sarah did not budge. Lamin sighed and held her hand tightly. Sarah, you've gone to every spiritualist in the city, and none of them could help you. The only thing left is to go to the one man who has prayed over people for decades, your father. Sarah stood up and began pacing the room. You don't understand. My father already believes I'm a disgrace to the family. Do you know what it will mean to show up in his house and tell him I have a hand between my legs, slapping men in bed? Sarah broke down again. I can't do it, Lamin. I can't face him, not like this. Lamin stood up and walked towards her. I know how hard it may seem, but he is your father. Yes, he might react harshly at first, but one thing I know for sure is that he would not turn his back on you, not in this state. But Sarah had her mind already made up not to involve her father. She made up her mind to force the old woman to reverse the curse. She did this to me, and she must take it away, she said to herself angrily as she arranged for some thugs to bring the old woman to her. They arrived at the old woman's house and found the place completely empty. No chairs, no bed, and no bubble gums. No one knew where she went, and Sarah could not believe that she was now back to square one. Devastated, she called on Lamin, who informed her that he was home with his girlfriend Abeni. Come to my house, he said to Sarah, who told him that she was on her way. A few minutes later, Sarah received a call from her father, who called to ask how she was doing. She froze because it had been over a year since she last spoke to her father on the phone. Even when she visited his church on some Sundays, she sat at the back and made no contact with him. Her father never called her on the phone, especially after he realized that she was a prostitute and tried to talk her out of it. But Sarah refused, stating that her path was different. I can't live a boring life like you, father, she said to her father, who told her that he wouldn't stand back and watch Sarah live under his roof as a prostitute. This was the day that Sarah packed up her bags and left her father's house into the house provided to her by one of her numerous men. The memories came rushing back as Sarah picked up her father's call. Hello, Daddy, she said as everywhere fell silent. Her father spoke up a few seconds later, revealing that he saw something in a dream. You were in chains, Sarah, but not the kind made of iron. You were screaming for help, but no one could hear you. I've been praying all morning. Tell me, what's going on? Sarah could not answer. Her throat tightened as tears began to drop from her eyes. Daddy, I can't talk now, but maybe soon I'll call you, she said to her father, who assured her that God loves her. The line went dead, and Sarah wiped her tears and continued to drive to Lamin's house. A few minutes later, she arrived at the house and met Lamin's girlfriend, who informed her that Lamin had to rush off to the office to drop off something for his boss. He'll be back soon, she said to Sarah, who sat down to wait. Abeni could not help but notice how sad she looked. Is everything okay? She asked Sarah, who burst out in tears. My life has been ruined, she said to Abeni, who she narrated the whole ordeal to. Abeni in that moment told her of a powerful priestess who cured her uncle of his lifelong madness. Sarah's interest piqued as she pleaded with Abeni to take her to the priestess. Abeni held her hand tightly. I will, but you have to understand, Mama Kumba is not someone you go to with a proud heart. She sees right through your soul. If your intentions are not clean, she'll send you away. Sarah wiped her tears and nodded. I have nothing left to be proud of. Please, Abeni, take me to her, she pleaded as Abeni took her to the house of the priestess. When they arrived, the priestess took a good look at her and asked a question that she never saw coming. What did you do to Lamin to warrant this kind of punishment from him? The priestess asked Sarah, who froze in shock to hear such a question. Her best friend Lamin, the only one she trusted with all that she got? Sarah could not contain her tears as she felt her heart break in a way that she never anticipated. Even Abeni stood there frozen to realize that her boyfriend was the one behind all that had been happening to Sarah. The priestess then handed her a sponge to use to take her bath at midnight. Once you are done with the bath, make sure you don't sleep till morning, or else the hand will kill you before it is killed. Sarah thanked Abeni and the priestess as she returned home, sad to realize that her best friend Lamin was the one behind her suffering. She sat on her bed in tears as Lamin called her number repeatedly, but Sarah refused to pick. She waited until midnight and did as the priestess had suggested. She bathed with the sponge and stayed awake all night, hoping for the strange hand to disappear. And truly, as the priestess had said, the hand disappeared. Sarah was now free from the evil hand, but her friendship with Lamin was forever broken. She never returned his calls. She didn't even have the need to. The pain of betrayal was deeper than the shame of her past, because this time it came from the one person she trusted the most. Sarah had learned her lesson from everything that had happened. She decided to pay her father a visit in church to give her life back to Christ. She arrived at his church a few minutes later and bumped into someone that she never expected. The old woman who she accused of being behind her suffering. She was sitting there in church, crying as she prayed, and Sarah could not believe her eyes. She approached the woman to apologize for ever believing that she was a witch, and the woman narrated her entire story to her. How her children were all sickle cell carriers that died despite all that she did to save them. The old woman told her how after losing them one by one, the rumors of her being a witch chased her out of her neighborhood and almost killed her spirit. She told Sarah, "People fear what they don't understand, child. My only mistake was looking strange, and when I sold that bubblegum to you, I saw sadness in your eyes. I didn't know what it was, but I prayed for you that night and got a revelation. It may seem as though you are free, but you have been bound by someone who holds a great grudge in their hearts for you." Sarah already knew who that someone was. She smiled at the woman and told her that she knew already, and the woman asked her if she knew why, and Sarah could not answer the question. She had ignored Lamin's calls for so long and never got the opportunity to know why he did such a terrible thing to her. Sarah sat quietly to listen to what the old man had to say. She listened as the woman revealed to her that Abeni was the one behind it all. Sarah opened her eyes wide in shock. "What do you mean? It's Lamin that's behind it," she said to the woman, who told her that his girlfriend Abeni wanted her to believe that it was Lamin. Abeni never liked you around her man. She wanted him all to herself, but Lamin could not shut up about you. You were always there, stealing the attention, and Abeni did not like it. At a point, she believed that Lamin loved you deeply, so she did what she did to you to make sure that Lamin never sleeps with you. Sarah's heart sank as the truth hit her like a violent storm. All the while, it was not Lamin, she thought to herself as she realized that she had been played. Everything began to make sense now. The sudden concern from Abeni, her offer to help, taking her to the same priestess who inflicted her with the curse in the first place. It had all been a calculated plan to separate her from Lamin. Sarah stood still in the church, her hands trembling, as the old woman gently held her shoulders. "You must confront the truth, my child. Not everything broken was meant to stay broken," she said to Sarah, as she wished her luck and walked away. That evening, Sarah returned home and locked herself in. She sat there and thought deeply, realizing that when the curse came, none of the powerful men she had been with came looking for her. They didn't call. They didn't care. It was Lamin who stayed, Lamin who worried, Lamin who held her when she cried. And she had thrown that away based on a lie. With courage that she hadn't felt in years, Sarah picked up her phone and dialed Lamin's number. He picked on the first ring, and Sarah pleaded for them to talk. They met a few hours later under the old mango tree near the church that they used to sneak off to as teenagers. Lamin stood with his hands in his pockets, looking broken and unsure. Sarah walked slowly towards him, her eyes full of tears. I know the truth now, she said, her voice cracking. It wasn't you. It was never you. Lamin looked up, a glimmer of relief flashing in his eyes. It was Abeni, she continued. She cursed me because she thought you loved me. Lamin stepped closer, his voice firm and honest. She was right. Sarah froze. I loved you, Sarah. I've loved you since we were kids. Even when you pushed everyone away. Even when you became the woman the world whispered about. I still loved you. But I never had the courage to say it. And I didn't want to be one more man who used you. I wanted to be the one who stayed. Sarah broke down in tears as she wept in his arms. I'm so sorry, Lamin. I was blind. I didn't know love even when he stared me in the face. Lamin held her hand and professed his love for her. He promised never to leave her side, and Sarah could not help but cry. She asked about Abeni and was told that Abeni left without a word. She knew I would never forgive her. Lamin said softly, she was always insecure about you. I just didn't know how deep her hatred ran. Sarah shook her head slowly, the weight of everything pressing down on her shoulders. But instead of crumbling, she stood tall. Sarah reconciled with her father and sisters. She stood one Sunday before the whole church and told her story, not out of shame, but as a testimony. She shared how all the men she thought loved her abandoned her in her darkest moment. The church embraced her as she left prostitution behind and became a counselor to women, using her story to inspire others to find a better path. Sarah finally married Lamin and they lived happily ever after. The lesson to be learned from this story is that chasing luxury at the expense of truth and love can lead to emptiness and betrayal. Sarah learned that the people who truly care for you will remain even when life turns ugly. It also reveals that envy can wear the mask of friendship and that healing often begins when we confront our past, accept love, and choose to change. Her journey shows that redemption is possible for anyone willing to face the truth, make amends, and walk a new path with humility. I hope you enjoyed the story.